Welcome back. I am Dan.
And I'm Joe. And
today
today we have an interesting subject. We're going to talk about one of the most despised and controversial people here in the not only 2000s, but the 2010s and 2020s. His name is Jeffrey Epstein. And I'm going to tell you why, Dan, we're going to talk about him. Something interesting happened. Even in death, he is still busting people's balls and making people miserable. So,
Yeah. I mean, his name still makes people cringe. The only good thing people say about him is that a lot of people speculate that he didn't kill himself. And I can believe that that's true that he didn't. But
that is, yeah, you're right. It is debated. Obviously, a little bit of background on him. He was born January 20th, 1953, and he passed away, obviously, August 10th, 2019. He was a controversial American financier, but what he's known for is being a child sex offender. He was born and raised in New York City. His life is just very, very fishy. He began his professional life, believe it or not, as a teacher at Dalton School, despite lacking a college degree. And he left the school in 1976, and he entered the banking and finance sector, working at Bear Stearns in various roles before starting his own firm. And obviously, Epstein cultivated an elite social circle. He procured very many women and children whom he and his associates sexually abused. And real quick, folks, in 2005 is when this started, coming out. Police in Palm Beach, Florida began investigating Epstein after a parent reported that he had sexually abused her 14-year-old daughter. And federal officers identified since then 36 girls, some as young as 14 years old, who Epstein has allegedly sexually abused. And the reason I say allegedly, folks, is he was in jail, and they say he hung himself. But again, that is in itself, as Dan pointed out, debatable. Some believe that he was murdered. He was arrested in July 6, 2019 on federal charges for sex trafficking of minors in Florida and New York, and he died in his jail cell. The official...
Joe.
Yeah, go ahead.
Quick question, though. Why do people speculate that he didn't kill himself? People besides myself.
Well, because many believe he ran, like we said here, and like I said a couple minutes ago, in elite social circles, politicians, actors, actresses, and there's an alleged list out there, and then there's a lot of famous names on that list, and many people don't want that list coming out. That's why, even though the medical examiner ruled his death was a suicide by hanging, there's a lot of skepticism about his cause of death. And there's obviously numerous conspiracy theories.
Well, how about the camera? How about the camera that supposedly went out when he's on suicide watch? That does not add up to me. And, this sounds a bit controversial of me to say, but I don't think that whoever killed him really expects us to believe he committed suicide. I think it was a message to
well, again, real quick, born in Brooklyn, and even how he acquired his wealth, even how he acquired it, is there's a lot of controversy around it. Some say he was a CIA asset. Some say he was doing work for Israel. But either way, the gist of this video is I came across an article. Even in death, he's hurting people and busting their balls. And you're probably figuring, Dan, what am I talking about? Well, Dan, I came across this article. I'm going to bring it up here, and I'm going to show it to the folks. And can everyone see that article? It says the headline: Jeffrey Epstein's estate, and the article says I'll say a better word, received $112 million tax refund. And for the non-Americans out there that are going to be listening to this podcast, the tax laws in the United States, and as Dan can tell you, are very complex.
Well, yeah, that's an understatement.
And they're written for the rich. Let's be honest. There's a lot of loopholes. And I thought, and many others thought, we thought these women were as part of the settlement. They were going to get pieces of his estate. But as we're going to see here, and I want to show this article. Can everyone see that? Now, Jeffrey Epstein's once vast estate. This guy had art. And I heard he had some weird art, Dan.
Oh,
Jewelry,
that's not a shock at all.
lavish properties, investments. A lot of people thought it was meant to be drained by settlements to his many sex abuse victims and payments to resolve other legal claims. But now it appears that two of his most loyal business associates, who are serving as executives of his estate, they stand in line to potentially reap a big benefit. That's why I said he's even in death. He's busting people's balls. He's hurting these sexual assault victims. Would you have anything to say about that, Dan, before we continue?
That's just plain disgusting. Because look, the fact that people were victims of a predator like himself, and some of those people were just small children, and they're not even adults yet.
Right.
And
I think they are now, or the youngest is in the 20s, I think. There was 36 of them, and there was a documentary on Netflix about it. At one point, one of the executors predicted the estate would shrink to less than $40 million from the original $800 million once all the payments were made. Basically, what was the understanding was depending on who you believe, his net worth was between 800 million and 1 billion. But they thought after the settlement that the estate was going to shrink to less than 40 million from its original 800 million. But after a $111.6 million refund from the Internal Revenue Service last fall, the estate's assets has swelled to 145 million. A probate court filing in the U.S. Virgin Islands shows. So apparently now, in America, when you make a will, especially with the rich, a lot of the times there's an executors assigned to distribute the will. So whoever the person that died, they have an executor and they distribute whatever's left, the property, money. And with most large claims against the estates having been settled, that newfound cash isn't likely to make its way to the victims of the disgraced financer. I guess if I'm reading this right, the victims were paid out, but this tax refund, this almost $112 million tax fund, you'd figure the victims should get that too, but they're not.
no,
Instead, some of his assets could be distributed to the co-executors along with other beneficiaries chosen by Mr. Epstein before his death. Most of their identities remain largely shrouded in secrecy. Court filings and depositions have revealed that beyond the co-executors, who are Mr. Epstein's longtime accountant and personal lawyer, another beneficiary is a woman who was Epstein's girlfriend at the time of his 2019 arrest on federal sex trafficking charges. But so allegedly, there are many others, supposedly. So Mr. Epstein, who killed himself while in prison, we can debate that another time. There is many theories out there that he did not. Had one brother, and that brother's name was Mark, and he says Mark, his brother, he doesn't know if he's among the beneficiaries. So regardless of who they are, the notion that this infusion of cash can't be claimed by the victims who have already settled their cases is frustrating to the women and their advocates. So apparently the tax fund, they can't touch it. Apparently, they already gotten a share through the first phase. I'm guessing when the original monies were distributed. I personally think the victim should get it all. But unfortunately, when it comes to tax law and in laws and wills, especially in Western countries, particularly the United States, there's a lot of technicalities and ironclad laws. Dan, do you have anything to add?
no, Joe. Listen, I'm pretty much the learner in this one as well. I'm as much of a learner as most of our audience, and no, this is a lot to take in for me.
Now one of the victims spoke out. She was 20. She already received a payment from the estate, but still, money can buy only so much. These girls' lives have been devastated, being sexually assaulted, sexually abused. And of course, representative from Mr. Epstein's estate, of course, they're not commenting. They're tight-lipped. And look, we talked about a few minutes ago. Epstein was a college dropout. Much of his wealth was basically he was charging hefty fees for providing tax and estate services to a handful of billionaires like Leslie Wexner, the retail magnate, and Leon Black, a private equity investor. So even how he taught in school without a college degree, without completing a degree, it's all there's a lot of holes to how he grew up, how he even amassed his fortune. Epstein's estate is paid out nearly $164 million in settlements to nearly 200 people that allegedly he sexually abused while these girls were teenagers or they were young women in their early 20s. The estate also reached a $105 million settlement with the government of the U.S. Virgin Islands to resolve a lawsuit over big tax breaks. Epstein had received from businesses and it had paid tens of millions of dollars. He had to pay tens of millions of dollars of fees and lawyers. So again, I don't want to get too deep into this article. I guess the victims did get some money, but they also feel they should get that $112 million tax break. And personally, I agree. But again, you have the law. And the tax refund stems from an estimated $190 million payment the estate made to the IRS in July 2020, based on the assumptions about the value of assets that they have since they were sold for far less. Epstein's mansion in Manhattan, for instance, sold for $40 million. So depending on what everything was sold for, and I guess how it worked out that the IRS, I guess when they were going over the value of the estate and it all came out, they owed him. I'm not a tax attorney, but they owed him $112 million. So I believe, look, the victims should get that money, and tax tax expert says it's not unusual for the IRS to refund money to a wealthy estate. So because they overvalued, basically the IRS overvalued some of the properties. So again, the laws in America, sometimes they can be brutal, sometimes they can be tough, and a lot of times they're unfair, especially to the common person. But the point here is, even in death, Jeffrey Epstein is like sticking it to the victims. It's like it's opening a wound, a wound. It's like a scar they're trying to heal and they can't heal. So there is a lawsuit on behalf of victims who never received a settlement. So we'll see. I hope whoever has been hurt by him gets the money. Dan.
Oh, I'm just saying, yeah. I don't even think it should be a matter of discussion. I think it just automatically go to them. I mean, look, when a low-level criminal commits a murder and they go to jail, they have to pay restitution to the victims, do they not?
Yes.
Well, someone who most likely came from poverty themselves still has to pay restitution. Oh, but meanwhile, some billionaire.
Yeah, this is the law, and I believe he was in jail waiting to go to trial. I believe so. Technically, on some of these charges, he was never, even though he was never found guilty in a court of law. Eventually, on some of these latest round of charges. And again, I'm no expert on Jeffrey Epstein. I just hope the victims can get closure. I hope the estate does the right thing by these victims and they get a piece of that $112 million. Because, yeah, maybe they'll get $1 million each. Now, people will say, that's a lot of money. Well, not for what happened to them, to some of them. They'll probably carry this with them the rest of their lives.
Yeah, Pete, you could, if something traumatizing enough happens to you, you could get even billions of dollars. And that won't get rid of the trauma inside of your head.
No, not at all. These girls can have emotional problems, mental health problems, and I'm not trying to sound funny, but intimacy problems, relationship issues. It can lead to a host of things. So my heart goes out to them. If it was up to me, they all would get that money. Obviously, the attorneys and the people who ran his estate have to get paid. But outside of the tax attorneys and whoever getting their attorney fees, the victims should get the rest of this money, even in death. Jeffrey Jeffrey Epstein is still haunting his sexual abuse victims. Dan, any final thoughts?
Oh, I think more of the list should be released. They say it's been released, but I don't know. I'm skeptical. I think the big names should be out there. And I do think those people should be punished. I don't
Yes.
think any lawyer, if your name's on a list, knowing that you went to a place
Well,
where there were underage girls, look, let me ask you this, Joe. In America, if I shot and killed somebody and you were right there with me, but you did nothing to stop me, would you also get charged with the murder?
I'd probably get charged an accessory to the crime, or.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
Dan, we also they have to go through. They have to be charged and go through a trial or through the legal processes. We have to be a society of laws. That's some of the problem that's going on in some societies. Look, if they did it and they're guilty, they should get punished to the harshest extent of the law. But
Well,
if
one thing I agree with Trump on, agree with Trump on, human traffickers should be put to death. I am
well,
for.
if they're charged, and they're found guilty, yeah, I'm not for doing sexually abusing young girls. Definitely
Nope.
not for that.
Nope.
And
Pedophiles and human traffickers should get the death penalty.
I agree. If it's found that they did it or they raped them or whatever, yeah, they should get the harshest extent. Well, folks, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please comment and feel free to add your opinions.
Yes, say anything you want. We said before, oh, be respectful. We both agreed. But now we both agreed, no, we're for free speech. You say what you want.
Yeah, say whatever you want. And but we also are going to say whatever we want. So it goes both ways.
Yeah. So please, folks, if you have it in your heart, like, subscribe, and bang the notification bell.
All right. Take care.